Good morning, everybody. This is Bhandari with TalkCondo.com, and today we're here to introduce a very special project with Christopher Wein, the president of Great Gulf Homes, and today we're going to talk about 357 King West, which is the first major condominium launch of 2018. So first of all, Christopher, thank you very much for your time. I know you're a very, very busy man, so we're very fortunate to be speaking to you today.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So when we're talking to condo investors, one of the most important things that we always tell them, and it's an ongoing theme, is when you're buying a new condo, more often than not, you're buying the developer first.
Yes.
So we always say that in new condos, the developer is such an important part of the overall equation. So why we love working with Great Gulf Homes is that you are, amongst the industry, known as one of the top tier builders, and for good reason. So first question is, in your mind, what
Sure.
makes Great Gulf Homes so special and unique from the other builders on the market?
Sure. And, part of it is we've been around for 42 years.
Yeah.
We've built over 50,000 condo units and houses, not just throughout the GTA, but also we develop in other parts of North America.
Yeah.
What we really believe in is we believe in design and innovation and using the latest technology to be the best builder we can be. We want to design the best possible buildings. We look at demographics, we look at market trends. We're completely vertically integrated, so we're not just a development company, we're also a construction company, we're also a condominium management company. So
Excellent.
From soup to nuts, we're involved in every aspect of the industry. And we also build mixed use, so we do office, we do retail. So it's important to us that we understand, the holistic nature of designing communities and building communities and what makes a great community. And I think all of that translates through myself and through our teams to a better product and I think to a happier homeowner and to a better customer experience.
Definitely. I mean, we sat in this boardroom right now, and there's a wall of awards behind us, and I think that speaks volumes. There's a lot that you said there, and just to unpack a couple of things that I think are very key is that when we're looking at neighborhoods and looking at buildings that outperform other buildings within the same neighborhood, and when I say outperform, I'm talking about a price per square foot or
Yes.
a rental amount. One of the key things that we see is that the builders that are doing very well are the ones that understand market trends.
Yes.
And they're building their buildings based on these market trends.
Absolutely.
So I think that's very, very important. 2017 was a big year for Great Gulf
Yes.
Homes, not necessarily on the new condo launches, but I know on the construction side.
Yes.
I think you guys celebrated the completion of one block,
Yes.
which, if you look over the last decade, during the construction and condo boom, I would argue that that's probably the crown jewel of the Toronto condo, the growth we've had, this
Thank
explosive growth, and I think that's something you guys should be very proud of.
Thank you very much.
One that I drove by today as well, which is a project that's very near and dear to my heart, is Mond Condominiums.
Yes.
Moshe Safdie architecture, and it's just a stunning building. And I think what I tie all this into is that because you own a construction company, Great Gulf are able to do this kind of stuff that to a level that other builders probably
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No. The vertical integration within our firm makes a tremendous impact on what we're able to achieve. We can, basically stretch the envelope further with respect to design and innovation. We invest literally millions of dollars annually into research and development. We're always trying to look and understand better ways to build buildings, better materials to use.
Yeah.
And we do look at those.
And it
market
shows,
trends.
and it shows in the final product. And I do have to say that.
Yeah.
One of the other areas that you guys were very busy last year is site acquisitions.
Yes.
And I'm not going to go into all the different sites, but I think one of the things that I do want to touch in is that it shows your continued bullish nature
Yes.
on the Toronto market. So I'd love you to just touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. No, I believe heavily in the Toronto market. I think that if you look at the GTA and you compare it if you look at it from a North American perspective, we still outperform every city in North America with respect to immigration, growth, economy, job creation. It really is a dynamic city. I think what's fascinating about Toronto is if Toronto was an American city, it would be, you'd have endless stories written about it. You'd hear all the time on CNN and Fox and so on. That's all they talk about. Because it's Canada, we're a little bit more shy, we're a little bit more subtle. I don't think as Canadians we recognize how strong Toronto is as a global city. And I travel the globe. both for my work and also for leisure. And Toronto really has come into its own in the last several years. And I think we've seen 10 years of incredible growth in Toronto. Since 2007, I think we've seen nothing yet. I believe the next 10 years are going to be far greater. And I think that Toronto really is going to become the new, for pardon the pun, the new New York City of the continent. We're now larger than Chicago, and there's many demographers and statisticians that estimate that Toronto will be bigger than LA within the next 25 years. So that's miraculous. It is an amazing place with amazing diversity. And Canada is an incredible country. I think Canada has never been more well respected on the world stage than it is today. And I think we're just going to see continued growth. So I think as a major Toronto-based developer, we need to continue to invest in our hometown, and we're going to continue to invest in our hometown. And that's why, if anything, although we're growing across North America, we are still growing enormously within the Toronto market, and will continue to. That's something I believe heavily in.
Great. I don't think I could have said it any better. I really think that was great. I want to transition now from Great Gulf to the location of 357 King. We're in the heart of the entertainment district, which in itself has blossomed over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
What's interesting about this is that this is almost like a return home for Great Gulf, because King and Spadina, the Hudson, was probably one of the first condominium buildings, or high-profile condominium buildings in this neighborhood, and it really set the tone for where this neighborhood came. So it's sort of like a homecoming for you guys, coming full circle.
It is, yeah, and we love the neighborhood, and certainly had did some great projects there. We have the Hudson, as you said. We have the Morgan. We have Charlie.
Yeah.
So we were one of the pioneers of King West, and really helped pioneer residential living in the entertainment district. So now in this past year, we've done a number of acquisitions, around 357 King, including the two Frank Gehry towers at either side of Duncan, as well as a number of other sites. And we're really seeing now, we believe that this is kind of the second coming of the King West neighborhood. In the beginning, when we were there as pioneers, it was really trying to create the entertainment district. But I think what's happened now, if you look at the city, is the central business district has really merged with the entertainment district, and especially within the major block between University and Spadina. I think King Street is turning into an extension of the central business district. You have the ability to access PATH in that area. You have a number of high-profile office developments starting to go up. Thomson Reuters just in the last quarter announced that they're moving their global digital headquarters to that neighborhood. You have things that are happening at the Well with respect to Allied doing some amazing office development, and RioCan doing some enormous retail development. So I think that the King West neighborhood is really going to be the most dynamic, most mixed use, most diversified, exciting neighborhood in all of Toronto. And I think what's most fascinating is when we look at Toronto, we talked about Bloor Street. We love Bloor Street. We like the Yorkville area. But Yorkville is kind of, a lot of what Toronto was.
Sure.
And King Street is what Toronto is going to be.
I love that you make that distinction, because what we always have said, and what we're starting to see happen now, is that Yorkville is sort of conservative luxury.
Exactly.
And what we're seeing in the entertainment district, and we're seeing it in a big way.
Absolutely.
It's sort of this younger vibe, and we're seeing it with the hotels that are coming into the area. That the Bisha that just opened next door is with this rooftop restaurant. It's a beautiful area. Nobu's going to be coming into the area, and they're choosing the entertainment district out of any neighborhood in Toronto that they could choose. They're choosing to set up in this area, which again I think speaks volumes for this area.
Absolutely, and I think that what happens is cities mature over time, and I agree with your analogy completely. And we think of New York very similarly. There's Yorkville will always be like Park Avenue,
correct,
like Fifth Avenue. It's always going to be the sort of 5th and 57th where Trump Tower is, because there's always going to be a need for that more traditional, more historical luxury neighborhood. But if you look at New York, the exciting things are not happening in that neighborhood. The exciting things are happening in the meatpacking district, in Chelsea, That's where there's, Soho. That's where there's all the dynamism is. That's where all the hottest restaurants are going. That's where the High Lines is. That's frankly where Hudson Yards is. Biggest development in New York's history is actually in Meatpacking in Chelsea. It's not over at Park Avenue and Trump Tower.
For
so
sure.
all cities go through this sort of maturing process, and that's why I say the King West neighborhood, and I don't refer to it as the entertainment district anymore because I really believe it's merged with the central business district. And I actually think of it more as the cultural and economic hub of Toronto. I think that over the next decade, we're going to see that entire district transform to be the cultural hub. And it is where tourism is going to be centralized. It's where business is going to be centralized. And, we're looking at a couple of hotel projects as well in that neighborhood, at developing some. And, it is amazing that the five-star hotels and all the sort of new hot brands are looking in King West. They're not looking necessarily in Yorkville or some of the more traditional neighborhoods of the past.
What I find amazing is that we've just had a 5-minute discussion on entertainment district. We've not even mentioned proximity to the sports, proximity to the restaurants, proximity to all. We mentioned the financial district, but it really has become like the work, live, play neighborhood. And when you start to unpack, everything that there is to do outside of the suite, downstairs, once you're outside the lobby, everything is there. You've got the theatre run along King Street. You've got steps to the Rogers Centre where you would get the best musicians and concerts every week.
Absolutely.
And you've got the baseball stadium. You've got Restaurant Row for its historical nature. You've got those restaurants on there. You've got the celebrity chefs coming into town all the time. So we've not even began to talk about what it is now. There's so much excitement about what it's going to become and what's in the pipeline. But already today, there's so much to do in that neighborhood. And
absolutely,
we saw a few years ago there was a lot of condominium projects that launched and came. And what we've seen is the absorption of these condominiums into the market has been incredible. There's no rental availability. There's no resales go up on the market. They're snapped up. So what that tells us is that the demand to live in this neighborhood is very, very high.
Absolutely.
And it's because of all these reasons that we've talked about. So I do want to shift gears now and talk specifically about 357 King Street West.
Yes.
It's at a great location on the southwest corner of King and Blue Jays Way.
Correct.
It is a 42-story tower with 324 suites.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what makes this condominium special.
Sure. So this is an interesting one because I would say that 357 King is an evolution for Great Golf in the sense that we're now looking, we're examining the neighborhoods that we're in, and everything we just talked about with King West is exactly true. And it's just getting better and better as time goes by. And as we build these developments out and as more density comes to King West, there's going to be more to do, more amenities, more excitement, more energy. And why I say it's a bit of an evolution is what we did with 357 King is we looked at it and said, what's different about some of the projects that are being built in other cities, other dynamic cities around North America, compared to what happens in Toronto? What happens in places like New York and so on in these very vibrant, exciting neighborhoods? And what ends up happening is, and what we see, and if you go to New York now, you see it, is you see sort of slimmer, lower density point towers, less amenities, no parking, small lobbies, and really what I say it's an evolution is what happens is people are starting to recognize they want to live in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood offers so much, like an incredible amount, that really what is the purpose of the condominium unit and the condominium building itself? Well, the purpose is it's a place to sleep, it's a place to rest, it's a place to make dinner. It's a place of respite and a place of rest and sanctuary, but you don't need to have swimming pools and all sorts of crazy amenities, because do you really want to be sitting in your condo in a party room by yourself? No, you're in the most exciting neighborhood in North America. You want to be out on the sidewalk. You want to be going to the Rogers Centre, going to the Four Seasons Centre, going to Roy Thompson Hall, going to all the bars, the clubs, the restaurants, enjoying the shopping, getting on the subway, heading to work. So we've designed the building in a very particular way to be extremely efficient. Our tagline is essential. It's what's essential. And it's really to take a book out of New York living. Because when you live in New York, And when you look at condominiums in New York and so on, New York City condominiums are all about the surrounding area and all about celebrating the neighborhood. They're not about putting in a whole bunch of expensive amenities and costs that are going to drive up your operating costs and your condo fees and so on. We recognize Toronto's become a very expensive city. We recognize that the real estate market has continued to increase in a very beneficial way for investors, but in many ways affordability is an issue. So with this particular building, we tried to take that into effect and to really think about not just how much it costs people to buy a condominium, but the associated costs with operating the condominium, paying the condo fees, paying for the amenities,
sure.
and so on. And that's why we've slimmed it down and really made it about the essentials. One of the things that's most dramatic about this project, we don't have a parkade. So it's one of the first projects in all of Toronto where we barely, especially of a building of this size, 42 stories, but we eliminated the parkade. Why did we eliminate the parkade? Because if you live in this neighborhood, there's absolutely no reason, especially with technology, with Uber and Lyft and car share programs and so on, there's absolutely no reason that you need to have an automobile. And we think people will save money by not owning an automobile that they can spend enjoying the neighborhood, whether it be on sporting events, cultural events, food, beverage, so on. The subway is literally a minute walk away. The path is a minute walk away. And the central business district is right there. There's nothing that you can't access by pedestrian. And then, with the new King Street pilot, which we're big supporters of, King Street's going to turn into an amazing transit and pedestrian street.
Yes.
And like other great pedestrian streets in great cities around the world, I think that's just going to add more to the fabric of it. So why have a parkade that ultimately someday is not even going to be used? What we did do, alternatively, to help people out, is we do have a car share program inside the building. So there will be 18 car shares. So then of the 300 or 400 or 500 residents that enjoy the building, when they need an automobile, they'll have the ability to go down the elevator, straight into a direct access car share program, jump in the car, and if they need to drive up north or something, they can use the car share. But the rest of the time, they're going to be enjoying that neighborhood. And what they're really going to be enjoying is the savings they have, because they're not going to have to spend extra money on condo fees and so on and so forth.
Excellent.
And then with the units, same thing. We took the units and we really tried to create as much efficiency as possible. This building has a large amount of 3-bedroom units, and many developers are staying away from 3-bedroom units because they're worried. What we did instead is we created an extraordinarily efficient 3-bedroom unit. So we created a 3-bedroom unit that really, in most other developments, would be a 2-bedroom unit. But through clever design and better engineering, we're able to get that extra bedroom. And whether you're an end user or whether you're an investor, I would take the extra bedroom. Why?
Sure.
Because as an investor, from a tenant perspective, I can then attract different tenants, more tenants. I could attract families, but more importantly, I can take that 3-bedroom and rent it to 3 different young people.
We're seeing a lot more of that in the market.
And co-living is huge. And from when I put my investor hat on, I would rather pay less and have 3 bedrooms that I can rent to 3 individuals than to have 3 1-bedroom units that are going to cost me a lot more money.
For sure.
From an efficiency perspective, it's also more efficient because we're in the, you mentioned it. King Street is the dining and culinary center of Toronto, which is the dining and culinary center of Canada. You've got the best restaurants all the way from food trucks to 5-star, sort of Michelin star restaurants like Aloe and such. You've got the entire bandwidth, and you have the diversity of every kind of food you could ever imagine. So do we need to have big kitchens and things like that? No, because if you live in that neighborhood, that's not what you're doing. So I would say that it's a New York style building, it's a European style building, because if you go to any of the great European capitals, the buildings are much more about just having the essential needs of the homeowner and not having a whole bunch of extras that just end up costing everybody money and nobody ends up using. And that's why even the name, it's 357 King, we didn't give it a name because buildings don't need names.
Sure.
That's the greatest address. King and Blue Jay Way, you can't think of a better address in Toronto, especially when you think of the future. So why not celebrate the address, celebrate the location? That's what this building's all about. We're creating a building that's going to be affordable, not just to buy today, but to operate long term. That's going to have, the unit that's exactly efficient to what your needs are, whether you're a 1-bedroom person or a 3-bedroom person. and you're going to have at your fingertips and at your doorstep every world-class amenity you can imagine in that neighborhood.
I think that's amazing. I think what's so interesting is that, again, we take it back to the Hudson as an example. Back then, you were building a building in a neighborhood that we're creating a vision, and now we're building a building in an area that is developed, and you're really able to celebrate
Absolutely.
what that neighborhood is all about, which I think is an amazing evolution for this company as well.
No, it absolutely is. And what's exciting about it is we do have a number of other projects coming forward in this sub-district. So, we now see this neighborhood as a master planned design.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to augment and add other developments and other pieces, as I mentioned earlier and as has been reported in the press. We did buy the Mirvish site, which are the two Frank Gehry design towers. They'll be the two tallest towers in all of Canada.
Very exciting project.
And we're thrilled about that. That project, we're going to treat a little differently. That project, given its scale and its magnitude, right now I'm looking for a 5-star hotel partner.
Excellent.
That just adds to that neighborhood.
For sure.
So the fact that we're literally almost kitty corner to King and Blue Jay Way, or 357 King, 357 King is going to benefit from the fact that Great Gulf is continuing to invest into the King Street neighborhood, and we see all these projects as different building blocks and different interlocks. So, some would say, well, why don't you just do another 357 King at the Mirvish site? Because I want to do something different, because I want to add and augment to the neighborhood. 357 King, those buyers are going to benefit greatly from the fact that in a very short period of time, we're going to be bringing out those Frank Gehry towers. We also have the corner of King and Spadina, where the current LCBO is. We're going to put a very luxurious tower, 48 stories, on that corner as well. That is going to help elevate the neighborhood even further. And then we have the site at King and Spadina, Spadina and Adelaide, where we're going to do another very large mixed use. Will include office, retail, as well as residential, multiple residential towers. That's going to be an exciting site. So there's just an enormous amount of things happening in the district. And when you zero back down to what's the center of, if you think of King Spadina as a district, what's the center? The center happens to be 357 King. And I love that my colleagues at Lifetime, who I'm very close to, built Bisha. I think Bisha is fabulous.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Those are the types of hotels we need coming to the city. And the fact that Bisha is our neighbor is wonderful. And we believe so much in Bisha, and we're so thrilled to have Bisha there. That's where we're going to be hosting the launch. So we're going to launch this project at Bisha, not because Lifetime's a competitor, but because they're colleagues, and we actually respect what they've done to the King Street neighborhood and how they've actually helped to add another layer of culture to this dynamic neighborhood.
It's an exciting time to be in this neighborhood, and I think there's no question about it. And I'm excited about your excitement, which is great. So you mentioned the launch. We've already been talking to our clients about this project. For clients that are interested in 357 King, is there anything else that you can add that speak to the investor to say this is the building to be in?
Well, I think there's a couple things. As I said, this building I specifically designed. I had a vision for it, and my vision for it was really to design it with the investor in mind. And it doesn't mean that I don't think about end users. I love end users. I'm an end user. I live in a condo myself. I live in Yorkville. I love condo living. I love raising a family in a condo. The reason I say that I put the investor's hat on to some extent, because in my mind it benefits both. So the investor and the end user are not that different. What matters to them? Well, what matters to them is that they're getting good value for what they pay for, that long term the operating costs and the costs associated around condominium fees and so on stay low, and that ultimately there's an affordability factor. For the end user, they need affordability because this is where they're living, and they need to have the ability to raise families and raise kids and so on, which is why we put a lot of 3-bedroom units and a lot of multi-bedroom units into this project. From the investor's perspective, they're needing to think of the needs of their tenants. They need to think about the needs of the renters. You mentioned there's nothing to rent. The rental rates, I believe, in this city right now, the vacancy rate is hovering around 1% or just under 1%. That's unheard of. It's unprecedented in North America. There's a huge demand for rental product, and those investors who invest in condos and then turn around and rent those units, they need to be thinking about the needs of their renters. And this building was designed with that in mind, with the needs of, as an investor, what do my tenants need? What do my tenants not need? And how can I get the best return possible?
Excellent.
We've also looked at the finishes. So we've made sure that we're putting in finishes into this building that are extremely durable, that are designed more for commercial use. We're now thinking more of our high-rise condo buildings as commercial buildings. So we're looking at systems, whether it be elevator systems, HVAC systems, the end finishes and so on, so that they will stand the test of time and that they will perform at a very high level. And then, on the fun side, the rooftop we've reserved on this building, so similar to Bisha.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the rooftop.
The rooftop is the amenity. So
Yeah.
again, thinking about whether it be end user or whether it be a tenant, but really thinking about the occupants of this building, everything that you can celebrate with respect to being in the King Cultural District, you can do as a pedestrian, absolutely, and that's why the building's very pedestrian oriented. However, whether you're on the 6th floor or whether you're on the 36th floor, not everybody gets to appreciate the vista and the view of being downtown. And this is, again, taking a page out of New York, where almost every New York project, whether it be a boutique hotel or whether it be a condo, they really do, love doing rooftop patios and rooftop, lounges and so on.
Yeah.
I wanted to do the same here. The views are miraculous, and I wanted to make sure that the person who's buying or living on the 6th or 7th or 8th floor has the ability to appreciate what the person on the 40th floor can appreciate. So we dedicated the top floor to an indoor-outdoor common amenity. It is a lounge, it's a dining space, and it's an outdoor terrace that is spectacular. And the views are unbelievable that you get in virtually every direction. You get gorgeous lake views, the CN Tower, the Central Business District, and you really get to understand what living in the heart of the most dynamic neighborhood is. So it's an unusual thing for a condo developer to give up.
That's the most prime real estate.
The prime
building,
real
right?
estate, the penthouse. But again, this building wasn't really designed about penthouses. This building was designed more to ensure that every resident in this building, regardless of where they're located, can appreciate and celebrate the location and celebrate, the joy of being a part of the 357 King community. And I think that is an evolution moving forward. And definitely with the larger units that we've put into the building, if there are families living in the building or if there are people cohabitating, which I agree with you is huge, having the ability to have common areas that allow you to get out of your individual unit and appreciate the space within the building without a high cost is huge. And the rooftop does that. The other amenity that we've changed, we obviously have a beautiful gym because fitness is very important to everyone. We have an enormous amount of bike parking because we understand the need for bicycles in this particular neighborhood and the fact that there's great bike paths on both Richmond and Adelaide. But more importantly, we also put in some what I would coin as sort of internal WeWork type space. So that's the other thing we're recognizing is a lot of people are working from home. There's consultants. They've got all sorts of needs around having the ability to have some common area where they can set up a laptop and feel like they can do some work and not be within their unit itself. Maybe meet some people, maybe have some meetings and so on. So we did create a space that really is designed, rather than creating a space that's designed to be, look like a cocktail lounge without a bartender, we designed a space that actually feels more like you're in a WeWork or you're in a Starbucks, and where a whole bunch of people can cohabitate at the same time and be on their laptops and doing work and enjoying each other's company while being productive. And I think that that's also an amenity of the future that a lot of current condo projects don't have. So we really are looking at where demographics are heading and what the trends are. And I believe that that's working from home and having the ability to have space where you can go and set up a laptop is really what the future's all about.
I agree.
So live, work, play. You can do it all at 357 King.
I love it. It's interesting that you say that because the first thing we said in this interview was one of the things that set the developers apart today is identifying those market trends and building towards that. So I love how that came full circle.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we're really excited about 357. We can't wait to introduce our clients to it. I want to thank you again for your time today. and we hope to bring our clients to you over the next few weeks.
Great. You're
Thank
very
you very
welcome.
much,
Thank
Christopher.
you.